Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Hey, I don't know about you, but I just love the shape of this plant. I love all the bright pops of color. You know how much I love roses. I love container gardening. You know, I love to grow broccoli. I love creme brulees. I love these little tangerines. Love that whipped cream. I love an entry hall in a house. I love the name of the color. I love this thing. Love the name. Now what I love about that, I just love those big white floppy petals. But I love animals of all kinds. What I love about these birds, I love bluebirds.
Alan, I love it.
I love it.
You love it. You love it? I just love it. Guess what today's show is all about? You know, I love this part of my garden because it's very geometric and it's organized around the central path. And you can see I filled the beds with a mixture of tulips. This side of the garden is dedicated to warm colored tulips. If you look on the other side, you'll see cool colored tulips in the ranges of pink and purple and so forth. And then there's this side, which is really screaming with hot colors. Everything from really bright citrus yellows to oranges to these bright red ones, which I think are just extraordinary. You see, when I choose my tulips and plant them in the fall, I try to select varieties that bloom early, mid, and late season. And if you look closely on the labeling of the packages that you buy, you'll see that. Because some tulips are genetically bred to be kind of the first to bloom, and then you have the next wave, which are the mid-season bloomers, and then you have those late bloomers. And by mixing them all together, you can expand your tulip season to almost a month. Now, the other thing that you need to remember is that you don't have to have a lot of room to grow tulips. I love to pack them into containers. So you can see in this garden, not only do I have them in raised beds along the edge here, I have raised beds here and raised beds of these really bright red ones in front of this garden structure. But you can also grow them in, as I mentioned, containers themselves. And in the pool garden, I've planted around the pool some containers full of a variety called Shirley, which is creamy colored with tinges of lavender, a very beautiful tulip. And I'm very generous when I plant them in containers. In those 22-inch containers, I'll pack about 75 bulbs. Yep, that's exactly what I said, 75 bulbs. You want to really pack them in. Now, a couple of tips to remember. If you plant them in containers, go for the largest container that you can, because you can just get more soil mass and you can keep the soil moist longer. Tulips really like plenty of moisture. And the other thing is make sure that you have a saucer under them that will hold water. Again, that gives them that necessary moisture they need to perform and be beautiful just like this. Coming up, organic gardening, knowing where your food comes from, and even more of the things that I love. You're such a beautiful flower. But you know what? You don't have to have blooms in your garden for it to be beautiful. Let me show you what I mean. I have to tell you, as a garden designer, I lean on foliage for visual effect in the garden. There's nothing like it for color and texture. You see, and it's also long-lasting. It's very consistent, unlike blooms which can wilt or fade. Take, for instance, one of my favorites. This is an ornamental sweet potato vine. It's called Sweet Caroline Raven. Raven because it's so dark. And what I love about it is the depth of color, but also this gorgeous shape. It almost looks like a duck foot or half of a star. Beautiful textural contrast in the garden, and talk about easy to grow. What's interesting, late in the season, you'll even see a few blooms on it that look like a morning glory because, well, sweet potatoes and morning glories are related. Another fun option for a blast of purple is charmed wine oxalis. It really performs well in a shady area, and its clover-shaped leaf, well, it looks lovely next to broadleaf hostas. Now, if you want to get more of a combination of colors in a foliage plant, you can't go wrong with Coleus Color Blaze dipped in wine. Its bold leaves really showcase that contrast of chartreuse and burgundy. Now the last plant I want you to consider for your garden is this beautiful ornamental grass. It's called Cheyenne Sky. And what I love about it is it has a very ethereal, light texture, a direct contrast to some of the broader leaf plants we've just looked at. But it's just gorgeous. What's wonderful about this plant is it's drought tolerant and it's a perennial, so it's going to come back year after year. When you're thinking about adding new plants to your garden, think about some of those foliage plants. You'll be glad you did. Sometimes there are situations that come up that require a little creative planting, and I do love some creative planting. Let me show you what I mean. You know, you don't have to become a shut-in or a recluse just because there are things in your neighborhood that you want to block out. Maybe there's something that's a little strange or maybe a retina irritant. There's a solution by, well, just perhaps growing something by using a plant. If you want to create a tall, broadleaf hedge, you can plant a needlepoint holly, for instance. They can grow up to 15 feet tall, perfect for concealing just about anything. Now, if you're looking to screen something that's low or short, like say an air conditioning unit, try planting an Indian hawthorn, such as Eleanor Tabor. But if you prefer a shrub with more of a refined lacy texture, try planting a yew, like this one called densiformis. And you're probably all familiar with the tried and true boxwood. I love this variety called green velvet because it doesn't have many disease problems and has a much softer texture. The thing to keep in mind is you don't have to resort to a major construction project to take care of problems around the yard. You know, just try something interesting like a new kind of plant. I found that plants can be the perfect solution. Hey, what about me? I want to play. We're gardening naturally and learning more about where our food comes from when we return. Being conscious of where your food comes from is something near and dear to my heart. My friend Janet Morgan at the Boardwalk Cafe couldn't agree more. Now, Janet, one of the hallmarks of Arkansas House is that you actually serve buffalo and elk.
Yes, we have the opportunity to do that here. Both of these meats were indigenous to Newton County.
These are beautiful cuts of meat.
Well, these are the tenderloin of buffalo, the tenderloin of elk, and you can see the difference in the meat, just as color.
Well, there's no fat in them.
No fat. That comes from everything being grass-fed, as free range as possible. They are only about 7% fat, whereas a confined animal on grain might be about 30% fat.
So with less fat, you need to cook them a little longer.
Yes, you'll have a longer time to get it to medium rare as opposed to a more marbleized piece of meat, because the fat is what allows the heat to travel through the piece of meat.
It's a good conductor of heat.
Yes,
so
and so it's going up through the meat, where the meat actually has to get hot to cook. And so you're searing it on both sides, but you are waiting also for the meat to actually cook to the medium rare. And again, we don't take these kinds of meats past medium rare.
You know, it's marvelous. This is very local in that these are two indigenous mammals that were in this part of the world.
Yeah.
The Buffalo River is named after the buffalo.
Right.
I mean, how much more local can you get than this? And the ranch where these are raised, well, it's just several miles from here.
Yes, L.C. Ratchford of Ratchford Meats raises our meats for our cafe, and he's still on the river and conforms to all of our organic standards, as do all of our farmers that contribute to the cafe.
Marvelous. I can't wait to try it.
These buffalo here at Ratchford Farms live a very stress-free life. next to beautiful Buffalo National River. It's close to the original way that they were raised as possible. They roam approximately 500 acres of wooded hills, hollers. They've got 11 live springs. They are free-flowing, run year-round. We have them tanked and piped into different pastures. Here in this herd, we've got approximately 40 to 45 head. This is our breeding herd. You can see that they are very well treated, very well fed, and you can taste it in their meat. Very low in cholesterol, fat, high in the vitamin B vitamins as well as iron. And also a serving of buffalo meat has the same amount of potassium as a banana. The bulk of our sales come from primarily through the jerky, summer sausage, as well as the meats. The jerky's summer sausage is handled primarily by your convenience stores, but there's a growing trend toward the leaner, healthier meats, such as the buffalo meat. And we sell to a lot of health food stores, and we've even started selling to some chains of grocery stores. I would like to encourage anyone who has never tried buffalo meat to get a burger, go someplace, try it.
After the break, a subject I'm extremely passionate about. That's organic gardening. When it comes to growing your own food, I love to keep it all organic. You know, there's a lot of talk about organic these days. Well, for me, organic is really about lifestyle. Simply put, organic to me just means not using synthetic fertilizers or herbicides or pesticides. So always look for a natural approach. Now, when it comes to fertilizing, if you live on a farm, hey, you can use all kinds of animal manure in your gardens, and that works really great and it activates the soil. So if you don't have a farm or you're not a friend with a farmer and can get manure and things like that, you can go to the store and there are organic alternatives there that you can choose in the way of fertilizer. Like Job's granular fertilizer, it's organic, it really does work. And it's fortified with biosome. And what that's about is just enriching the soil. You see, there's a whole system of microorganisms in the soil that we need to pay attention to. If the soil is healthy, your plants are going to be healthy. Now, one of the things that I like to do to control aphids, for instance, that might get on my young tomato plants is to use beneficial insects like ladybugs. Who doesn't love ladybugs? So turning a platoon of ladybugs loose in your garden to eat those aphids is a great natural way, an organic way to deal with a problem. As I was saying before, for me, organic is really about lifestyle, making choices that are better for the planet. When it comes to growing my garden, I want to make sure that I consider the health of the soil. For me, being able to bring in fresh vegetables that I've grown and I know how they've grown, well, that means a lot. Hey, if you haven't tried organics, give it a try. You'll be glad you did. Learn to love backyard chickens when Garden Style returns. You might say I have a passion for backyard poultry. I think everybody ought to have a few chickens. I bet if you start raising some, you'll find you have a passion, well, equal to mine. My friend Keith Bramwell has a few tips if you want to get started.
Hello, I'm Keith Bramwell, and I'm a professor at a university in a poultry department. The majority of the people that are looking to raise chickens really are looking for eggs. You know, something they can just go out and get fresh eggs in the morning. One of the thoughts is if you want eggs, you've got to have rooster. And that's not true. Our commercial chickens, particularly some of the more common breeds, they've been bred and raised for years and years and years for egg production. And so you do not need a rooster. They need proper nutrition, proper housing. Nature will take its course in the spring, summer months, falls, when the days are long. They're naturally going to want to lay if they're a good, healthy bird, and then a rooster is not necessary. Now, obviously, if you want to hatch chicks, you need that rooster, but not to get eggs. In raising chickens, particularly if you're kind of a beginner, you need to look at your space availability you have. For day-old chicks, you know, you want to keep in an area where you can keep the draft off them, the wind off them, keep them warm. You want to provide a heat source for them. But as they become adults, you get into a situation where ideally you would have them out in the open. They can graze, they can go eat some, you know, forage for some of their own food sources. You know, the minimum with some of our large chickens like this, a minimum you probably want maybe 3 to 4 square feet per bird. You know, some people can do less and that's fine, but most people are going to want to give them as much as possible. So you're going to want to give them a big open range and field. But you want to make sure that you can house them at night, secure them from predators, from rain, snow, wind, whatever. And in those situations, you probably want to go down and get about 2 square feet per bird, maybe less. But that's only for like nighttime use, and then the day you give them a little bit more. When we're feeding our chickens, as far as giving them any of the extra stuff, you know, our table scraps and everything, I mean, that's great. You know, I mean, there's people that'll feed just the leftovers from the dinner table or the vegetables or the fruits they get out of their own orchard or garden. Don't make that the primary source of their food. Give them their balanced diet. It's formulated for that. Let them have that as kind of dessert or a treat. Even eggs, you can give chicken eggs. Kind of funny, give them the eggs that they lay, but don't give them to them raw. Cook them, you know, so they don't resemble the egg that they had, maybe some scrambled egg, maybe the shells, whatever. People do that. It's a good source of protein for them. Probably the best tip I can give for a backyard enthusiast that just wants to get into chickens: learn, read, talk to as many people you can. Read from good sources, look for science about chickens, education. Like I said, we've learned a lot about them. Go to universities, go to extension offices, talk to 4-H leaders, go to poultry shows where people have experience raising birds. Probably the biggest tip I can give. You know, be careful who you hear information for, because everybody's got an opinion on something, but make sure that they've got some experience on it. And that's the big thing, is just talk to as many people you can, learn as much as you can, read as much as you can, and then you'll do well. And then be flexible, also be flexible to make adjustments for your situation.
Garden Style returns just after the break. Well, I've enjoyed sharing with you some of the things that I love, but I'd love to hear some of the things that you love, that you really derive joy from. So how about posting some of your favorite images on my Facebook page? Until next time, I'm Alan Smith for Garden Style.